Chapter 11:11. Dinwan thought for a moment. Let's call it the seismograph for now. Thanks to you, I was able to make a trip to the 70 format laboratory. I more or less gained something. This was the truth. However, Luo Nan rarely talked about this information with Dinwan. He just had a tacit understanding in his heart. Suddenly speaking of this aroused Luo Nan's curiosity. I've never asked Din. Have you found the source of the divine revelation? I haven't. Dinwan never denied that his extraordinary power and knowledge came from the divine revelation he experienced in the wilderness. He had been diligently seeking these past few years, hoping to find the true source of all this. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed this time. Dinwan himself was quite calm. Order doesn't equal smoothness. Perhaps it's just a confirmation of our current ignorance. Dinwan's words were sometimes even more awkward than Luo Nan's. However, Luo Nan had a conjecture regarding his understanding of the God's revelation. The core of the grassroots organization of the order of creation that Dinwan had created had far too many similarities with the school of creation that Luo Nan had come into contact with at the relay station. If the worn-out spaceship outside of the Sunwheel prison was added to the traces of information projected to Earth's spacetime, Luo Nan couldn't help but suspect that Dinwan's divine revelation overlapped with the research direction and target of his own family to a considerable degree. However, he couldn't divulge this conjectural information for the time being. It was very likely that Dinwan had already sensed it. Yes, this was tacit understanding. Dinwan explained the design of the seismograph. My experience in the laboratory gave me some inspiration and stimulation. You know, it's unavoidable to feel that the space-time environment we are in right now isn't particularly stable. Luo Nan went, Then he laughed. Dinwan continued. After returning to Xia City, that feeling lingered around me. I don't know if it's real or just my imagination, so I made this thing hoping to verify it. It's mainly based on what I've seen and heard in the laboratory, and with reference to the environment on both sides, I made a sensor device. Of course, I'm still lacking a layer. There are many parameters that I can't fill in. If possible, you can try to complete it. Though Dinwan's explanation was not clear and direct, Luo Nan still understood. This should be a part of Dinwan's experience after coming into close contact with the Misty Labyrinth. Dinwan used the creation technique he was most proficient in to form a tangible object. Without a doubt, this was a good opportunity to observe and understand the Misty Labyrinth from a different angle. Of course, Luo Nan accepted. I'll go back and study it. I'll go back and do some research. The two of them did not exchange any pleasantries. Both of them were pure researchers and most of their communication was through the products under their hands. Luo Nan tossed the seismograph up and down. The reason why it was called this was because Dinwan was quite certain of the relationship between the Misty Labyrinth and the Earth's local spacetime. At this moment, Luo Nan involuntarily thought back to the series of research that Peony and the others had done in Spring City some time ago. There was also the poetic metaphor of the wheel that ran over time and space. Alright, I have to admit that there are many capable people in this world. By the time Luo Nan and Bamboo Pole met up in front of the SA office building in Xia City, it was already around 11 o'clock in the morning. By this time they could go to the government department to go through the normal procedures. They could find a restaurant outside to get ready, eat their fill and come back in the afternoon. Of course, Luo Nan didn't need to do this. By the time he arrived, his temporary secretary Bamboo Pole had already straightened out the procedures and people on this side. What Luo Nan needed to do wasn't just simple procedures. He needed to make further adjustments. Boss, you should have some sense of privilege. Bamboo Pole, who had just finished a round in the building, naturally pushed the problem of his busy morning to his boss, who had provided him with a generous reward. You should know that your entire family is a member of the SCA's high-level authority group. When it comes to the protection of identity information, there is a corresponding clause. In fact, when you were asked to go through the procedures this time, you could totally slap the relevant personnel in the face and question him. Why was our household registration information leaked? Bamboo Pole had ample talent for acting. He really did have the appearance of a hedonistic young master. Luo Nan laughed when he saw this. It was the SCA official who accompanied Bamboo Pole and waited for Luo Nan's arrival. His expression was hard to describe. Luo Nan also knew this person. He was deputy chief Hu of the Xia City branch of the SCA. Last year Rui Wen's identity was verified by him. This time he was the one who came forward to receive her. His intentions were very obvious. In the end he was a colleague of his uncle. He seemed to be someone who knew He Yuan. Luonan spoke softly. If you want to slap me, I have an SCA employee at home, but he's the only one who would slap me. Plus, this matter was mainly because too much information was leaked to the school. Rui Wen's identity as a vagrant was a cover. She never thought of hiding it from others. Bamboo Pole nodded. But I still suggest that after this matter, the measures to protect identity information must be strengthened. Perhaps this little trick will be completely useless against a true adversary, but at the very least, it won't be a waste of time for inexplicable reasons. You're right. Chief Hu, I'll have to trouble you from now on. No trouble at all. I'm ashamed to say this, but our service really isn't up to standard. Deputy Chief Hu's attitude was even more humble than the last time they met. He led the two inside. Luonan didn't actually need to personally handle the specific procedures. Luonan had already given the SCA and the government system of Xia City a gargantuan amount of face by sending over Dean Wan's personal verification. Under Bamboo Pole's mediation, what Luonan needed to do right now was basically to negotiate and question. Of course, neither Luonan nor Bamboo Pole paid much attention to it. They changed the subject on the way. I made a little discovery just now. It's related to our cute, beautiful housekeeper, Miss Shui Yuan. Didn't you mention something about the game network? I just went up to do a bit of research. She's up there? So she's a vagrant. Luonan immediately had a guess. Emoya had said something in the morning about being confused when one is involved. Bamboo Pole nodded. She's not just a vagrant. She's quite a senior in the game network. What I'm trying to say is that she was already registered on this website before it became famous. He probably just left the circle. Is she a member of the exchange? That's not it. I also did a bit of research. Miss Shui Yuan is a relatively rare city migrant. She followed her adoptive parents from Hu City to Xia City when she was 8 years old. It's been 10 years since then. She had been adopted into this adoptive family for no more than 3 months before that. It was also not long after Hu City released the Vagrant Relocation Act. She was one of the first vagrant descendants to be adopted. Due to the fact that the procedures weren't complete back then and the fact that she was moving across the city, her vagrant identity was never revealed until now. It sounds quite complicated. It's just that it was complicated back then. Bamboo Pole spread his hands. Actually, the reason I'm telling you this is because if I can dig up her background, then others can too. Actually, I just casually looked up some information when I was drinking coffee in Chief Hu's room. I didn't even use any technical methods. Huh. Shui Yuan's vagrant identity isn't exposed. Once exposed, the trouble will definitely escalate. Bamboo Pole's judgment was still ringing in Luonan's ears when something happened over at Beach D. And the funny thing was that Luonan didn't find out about this from Mo Yao or Rui Wen. Instead, he found out about this from a hot topic on social media. A short video spread across many popular social media platforms in Xia City. It quickly became popular and eventually activated Bamboo Pole's network sniffing and capturing mechanism, allowing the video to enter his database. Soon, the two people in charge of the Xia City branch of the SCA were left dumbstruck by the sudden explosion of the video. The place where the video was taken should be the office building where Ming Tang Culture was located, and the person filming it was most likely a paparazzi reporter. The reason they said so was because they had no idea where they got the news from. They blocked the elevator entrance and accurately captured the BHD team. From the video, it could be seen that the paparazzi were clearly heading for Shui Yuan. Their mouths were full of words like vagrant, protest, mutant infection, quarantine policy, and other words that had nothing to do with the entertainment industry. The questions they asked weren't up to par. They just picked out the most exciting things to say. Look at the trio from BHD, especially Shui Yuan's reaction. What kind of reaction could she have? The trio from BHD, who had just made some progress from being an amateur, had never seen such a spectacle before. Their beautiful faces turned pale for a time. They retreated and were completely blocked inside the elevator. But in the next moment, the people at the very front of the crowded elevator entrance all lost their balance for some unknown reason. Some fell forward, some fell backward, and a large number of people fell. And on top of the bodies that fell all over the floor was Rui Wen. It was without a doubt Rui Wen. It was unknown when she arrived at the front. She was the first one to break through the crowd from the elevator. She crossed the chaotic area on the ground and led the trio from BHD as well as Moya and the others to quickly break through the encirclement. No, it wasn't accurate to say that they broke through the encirclement. They simply swaggered off. What's going on? Luonan was a bit stupefied. No wonder the internet was exploding. When celebrities from all walks of life were interviewed, all sorts of dark histories emerged one after another. But most of the time there were filters, inappropriate statements, covert insults and so on. It was truly unheard of for someone to overturn more than 10 people at once and swagger off like that. If it was a bodyguard, then it would have been fine to rely on brute force to commit murder. But the one who made a move in that instant was a little girl who looked to be a few years younger than the trio from Beach D. What's going on? Luonan found Moya's number and called her. He actually couldn't get through twice in a row. When he finally got through with great difficulty, he was showered with these words. It's the ones you've seen on the internet. They're cool, right? Moya was clearly still in a state of excitement. If these words get passed to the reporters, you'll be an instigator. It's not that serious. We were just defending ourselves. Luonan learned more information from Moya's mouth. The reporters that had surged over were fine. They looked like a surging crowd with an extraordinary aura. But in reality there were only 2 or 3 reporters with interview permits, and they were all from unrated tabloids. If this was the case, then the agent who had been following them from the side was completely capable of controlling the situation. But Luonan never expected that these paparazzi reporters had actually been summoned by some anti-fans. That's right. A good portion of the people who had tried to rush into the elevator were of this status. Especially when there was an extremist mixed in. An unknown liquid mixed with paint was found on his body. There were also blades and the like. This solved one of Luonan's doubts. No wonder Ruiwen took the initiative to make a move. It was said that this person was originally a fanatical fan of Shui Yuan, but at the same time he was also an extreme anti-vagrant member. Shui Yuan's registration on Yulian clearly pricked his paranoid and fragile nerves. He gathered with other anti-fans and summoned paparazzi to set up this trap. Couldn't be said that he was completely brainless, but this method of doing things was really hard to evaluate. Luonan didn't feel like wasting even a second on this kind of person. He was more concerned about the aftermath of this matter. There were far too many people involved in this matter. Ruiwen, Moya, and the trio from Beach D all appeared on camera in this matter. And from the perspective of the people in the entertainment circle, this sort of sharp rise in negative popularity was absolutely not a good thing. Luonan and Bamboo Pole glanced at each other. Bamboo Pole had just walked through Luonan's online information database. Bamboo Pole turned to reveal a serious expression. A dam of 1,000 miles can collapse because of an ant's nest. Without a good beginning, the entire matter is destined to be utterly terrible. Look, this is the trouble caused by you people letting the high-level privileges go unused. Luonan shook his head and directly got up. You guys talk. I'm going to take a few calls. This short video began to ferment in Luonan's circle of friends and relatives in the time it took to make a few phone calls. Many people, including Luonan's aunt and uncle, called to inquire about the situation. There were even more calls from Moya. There was no need for a professional like Bamboo Pole to make a move in the group of friends. Information regarding this matter came from various social media and various other online platforms. All of them were gathered in an endless stream. The focus of the matter had clearly shifted. The attention of the masses of netizens didn't have the patience to investigate the complicated background. Who was Shui Yuan from the BHD group? Why did they dare to do such a thing? Why did they do such a thing? It would be hard to get any results without waiting for a few days. The true focus came directly from the video. Who was that young woman who overthrew the reporter and swaggered off? And then a certain busybody took a screenshot from the chaotic video. The popularity of this matter began to rise sharply. The main character of the screenshot was Ruiwen. The focus was on her actions, but the core was her eyes. That cold and even empty gaze of hers when she overthrew the reporter in an instant. Even someone like Luonan, who knew her inside out, felt his heart tremble when he saw it. Of course, the essence of everything was still her appearance. Although Ruiwen wasn't the stunning type, her skin and bones were excellent. Moreover, she possessed a body and soul structure that exceeded that of a normal person's level of life. She was truly a flawless beauty without any blind spots. She absolutely could withstand the nitpicking and comparison of those bootlickers on the internet. All of this was quickly streamed on the internet this morning with the dance practice video of Rui Wen and the BHD group. It caused a further commotion. Chapter 11-12. Is this a publicity stunt? The amount of information about the demon-eyed woman on the internet had been fluctuating, but it maintained a certain level of popularity and did not stop for a few days. As a result, Zhang Yingying, who had been concentrating on the godson raising technique, couldn't help but wonder and sigh when she handed in her homework. Don't you have a limit? This isn't normal. The general public would only find it abnormal if there's a restriction, right? Zhang Yingying was quick-witted and immediately grasped the key point. You're letting this go? It's just tacitly allowing some people to add fuel to the fire. Understood. Protect that long-legged snow garden and divert the public's attention. No wonder Mingtang culture statement was so vague. That makes sense. Otherwise, you guys might as well just leave the SCA's high clearance group. It's useless. Speaking of which, you guys are throwing Rui Wen out to attract firepower. It's all right. The comments online about Rui Wen are relatively neutral. We've also asked for her opinion. Rui Wen doesn't really care about such things. Instead, she's been practicing with Shui Yuan and the others for a longer period of time. In reality, this wasn't a big deal. The storms of the secular world couldn't affect them at all. At least, a considerable number of people thought so, including Zhang Yingying. The problem was, it wasn't just the secular world. The news had also caused ripples in the inner world. It had only been a little over half a year since the big incident of Miss 2 out of 1,000. She could have become a world-class tycoon in a single leap, but in the end she had fallen into the so-called trap of opportunity of an extraordinary. This incident was still fresh in many people's minds. Needless to say, Luo Nan was one of the main characters of this incident. He was currently setting off a tsunami of impact in the world. The combination of legend and gossip was so perfect that it was hard not to attract people's attention. You have to pay attention. I heard from the boss that the Starry Sky Club has already received several rounds of inquiries regarding Rui Wen. They're using the same old trick of 2 out of 1,000. They're probing and provoking. Yes, I know. They want to bind Raven to the value of the deep blue world as a key to open the door. Well, actually, I'm a key too. Luo Nan began grading Zhang Yingying's homework. He wasn't interested in this matter. In fact, he received the news earlier than Zhang Yingying. After all, he was a member of the Starry Sky Club in name. I understand. Zhang Yingying sighed. What an annoying label. It's all over your head. Right now there are many people, and it's not just those from the deep blue world, who are trying to stick labels on Luo Nan. This isn't completely intentional. They are facing an object that they are temporarily unable to understand, and they are unwilling to pay the cost of time. Sticking labels and making definitions is the most worry-saving. The problem is that there are people taking advantage of this trend to add fuel to the fire. This is quite troublesome. What was even more troublesome was that these messy labels, if they had a unified prefix or suffix, they would eventually be locked to something like keys. It would be useless to tear them off later. For example, the key to crack the new plane. The key to breaking the source of the mutated infection. Could even be the key to unraveling the secrets of the deep blue world. The key to unlocking the limits of human evolution. Of course, it was also entirely possible that it was the key to opening Pandora's box, the key to breaking the current order of human society, and so on. In short, they were all keys. Luo Nan had been in a special position ever since the Pacific Ocean Summit. He was the crux of everything, but he was also the key to everything. At least this was the impression he gave others. Even though he intentionally slowed down the progress of the global census to buy a certain amount of buffer time, he was unable to stop the flow of people's thoughts. Speaking of which, is it really that important to distinguish the source of the mutated infection and the extraordinary power? Is it that important? Zhang Yingying left a message on the private chat interface. That depends on whether or not someone is concealing something. How complicated. I thought we never needed to think about this aspect. Zhang Yingying's sorrow was not unique to her. At this stage, the spirit of the summit conference had already spread widely in the inner world circles. Even though the possibility of everyone suffering from the mutated infection was extremely small after the awakening of their extraordinary powers, people still needed to pay attention to this important development at all times. Whether it was the source of radiation or the trend line, these concepts seemed understandable, but they were complex and unfathomable. They all announced that the world they lived in was undergoing rapid changes. They needed to work hard to adapt. However, a considerable portion of people still followed the trend and advanced. If we don't do well, we'll become the enemy of the entire world. Think on the bright side. The entire world might be convinced. There are far too many inconceivable things on Earth. There's no need to talk about it in the universe. Let's talk about what's happening right now. Who would have thought that you, Sister Yingying, would walk the path of a breeder and never return? Protruding? I'm praising you. Luo Nan's attitude was very sincere. This was because the homework Zhang Yingying had handed in, or more accurately, the dumb sand breeding diary, was getting better and better. She was already quite clear about the special aggregation mode of dumb sand, which seemed to be an accumulation of sand. She even began to suspect that this aggregation mode was a reflection of some sort of external structural state. That's right. Dumb sand was highly related to the magneto-optical mica. Though the magneto-optical mica was rapidly growing in the past few days, and the disturbances it brought to dumb sand were a bit too frequent, Zhang Yingying was able to capture this abnormality under the premise that she was severely lacking in information. She was able to form an accurate judgment. This was quite amazing. And in today's homework, Zhang Yingying had even begun to consider searching for other order fulcrums for dumb sand to serve as backup. She wanted to volunteer herself. In fact, this was very much in line with the idea of the fantasy schools, artificial fantasy breeds, to transfer control, the kind that went straight to the core. I have to say, Sister Yingying, you really have an extraordinary acuity in this field. Just say it's talent. Yes, it is indeed a talent. In the domain of configuration and superconfiguration, talent was also very important. According to Luo Nan's understanding of the situation, there were some people who were very good at mathematical logic and derivations. There were some people who were able to use super strong insight to point out the specific structure and spacetime distribution in an instant. Luo Nan could barely be considered as the second type. This was under the premise that he possessed a powerful mental sensing ability, and he had the endless spacetime configuration fragments within the misty labyrinth as a reference. To be honest, it was the selection and analysis of a large amount of valid data, and it was forcefully fed. Zhang Yingying, on the other hand, did not have a strong foundation and conditions like him. Under such circumstances, she was able to repeatedly grasp the key parts of the dumb sand's growth process, had her own ideas, and effectively form a positive interaction with the dumb sand while still lacking a lot of knowledge. Other than talent, there was no other explanation. Chapter 11:13. Forgive Luo Nan for being biased. From his perspective, White Rainbow was an innate ability that had yet to push Zhang Yingying to B rank. There was no way it could be mentioned in the same breath as her outstanding talent in configuration and superconfiguration. Did Her Majesty Empress Wu make an error in judgment? Similar thoughts surged into his mind once more. Luo Nan did not use the fact that Earth lacked configuration before he came into being, especially the theory of superconfiguration. From his perspective, this shouldn't be a problem for Her Majesty Empress Wu. Forget it. I don't think. Luo Nan had already graded Zhang Yingying's homework and discussed a few specific details. In the end, he asked, "Do you want me to open up an experimental area for you in the Bloodwill Rings Fortress? I see that you've already begun to consider the problem of a simple configuration's systematic aggregation, but you don't dare to perform overly extreme experiments on dumb sand. Then you'll need to find another suitable target." Zhang Yingying used exclamation marks to express her emotions. Are you going to use the people of the branch's lab rats? Are you going to bring the Bloodwill Rings Fortress to life? Just from this question alone, it could be seen that Zhang Yingying had a plan in mind. She had captured Luo Nan's train of thought. It shouldn't be too difficult to use the Bloodwill Ring as a basic unit to create a simple consciousness system. After all, the structure of the Bloodwill Ring is simple, and the investment in soul strength is limited. There won't be any problems. Luo Nan was certain in his mind. Right now, the fortress has more of a creation component. The flavor of fantasy is too light, and it's a relatively shallow application. It's a bit of a waste of resources. Also, it's easier to filter out people like you, Sister Yingying, who possess the gift of configuration and superconfiguration. The chances of this are small, but there's no way to go wrong with this. Do what you want. Zhang Yingying decisively gave up on her plans to investigate further. In this domain, Luonan was the authority of authority. That's wrong. In this domain, he was the only authority on Earth. No one could compare to him. She would just do whatever Luonan said. Then I'll start making preparations. Luo Yanwei, tell President Ouyang Gao Tianshi and the others. They've been very tight these past few days. I don't want them to treat me as a spy because of a miscommunication. There were quite a few ability users in Xia City, especially those with fleshly bodies. It was better to use the psychic wave network to construct the Ring of Blood Will. Recently, the branch had been researching the connection between the psychic wave network and the Ring of Blood Will. Luonan responded with a grunt. Then he asked curiously, President Ouyang, why are you so nervous? You don't know? Mo La, who came over to visit his family, has been going in and out of the psychic wave network. He seems to be doing some tests. With such a top-notch assassin beside you, no one would have a good time, right? Can't we just chase her away? The problem is that President Ouyang also wants to take this opportunity to improve the infrastructure of the psychic wave network and upgrade it. That's up to you. Speaking of which, you really don't take it seriously. Luonan replied with a puzzled emoji. Don't think that just because you brought out the name of a global census, others will look at the whole world like you. That Imola and many others might think that you are trying to divert the attention. Now, if you stop at any place for too long, someone might suspect that there's something wrong with that place. There's already a rumor outside. You're talking about the new plane, right? I don't care what other people think. Besides, their thoughts can't be wrong. Sigma degree, retract. Retract the information. Didn't you see the research results of Professor Wu Zunliang and Peony's team? I can't say that their research has touched upon the essence, but I rather approve of the general trends and phenomena. Pure research is really great. If the matters of the world could be dissected and solved in this way, then it would be super simple and super blissful. Bullshit. Don't be so sour. For the sake of doing research, this sister's hair is falling one by one. Zhang Yingying directly used voice to complain. Reclamation seems like something that happened in my previous life. The so-called reclamation was playing the 10 days in the wilderness game. For a heavy player like Zhang Yingying, this was quite hurtful. Luonan said in passing, I'm really going to reclaim the wilderness tomorrow. When I come back, everyone can go to Frost River Reality and relax. Isn't the expansion pack coming out soon? Zhang Yingying quickly came to a realization. You're going to the wilderness? For what? To sweep a grave. In the blink of an eye, it was close to the weekend. According to Luonan's plan, he was preparing to go to his mother's burial ground in the wilderness on his solar birthday, the day of his mother's death. This was something he had been brooding over ever since he became sensible. He really didn't have the ability or the conditions before, but now he absolutely couldn't miss this opportunity. According to Luonan's plan, his schedule would quickly become packed after sweeping the grave. Whether it was the global census or some other work, they would all take up a large amount of his time. Before this, he felt that he should communicate with Rui Wen. It was his aunt who pulled him by the ear. She wanted him to care about the mental health of his little sister, who was at the heart of the struggle. It was obvious that Rui Wen had been excessively cold and calm these past few days. This made his aunt more and more unable to grasp the little girl's thoughts. Frankly speaking, Luonan didn't really understand. So after grading Zhang Yingying's homework, Luonan turned around and went to Rui Wen's room, the small room at the end of the corridor. Rui Wen, I'm coming in? Everyone's sensory abilities were extraordinary. This greeting was just out of courtesy. Luonan directly pushed open the door and entered as he spoke. Though it was already night, the lights in the room weren't turned on. Rui Wen was used to the silence of the dark. Normally, when she was at home, she would just stare blankly in the corner of her room. Right now, this sort of time was becoming less and less frequent. This was because the majority of her energy was placed on exploring the misty maze. Rui Wen's gaze fell upon Luonan's body the moment he entered the room. It was like a corner of the starry sky under the serene curtain of the sky, seemingly dark yet bright. After a brief pause, a faint blue light replaced the room. It was the light of the virtual work area. Today I've discovered something. Luonan discovered very awkwardly that it would be very difficult for him and Rui Wen to have a heart-to-heart talk to continue. The reason was none other than that Ruiwen wouldn't pour her heart out to him. Comparatively speaking, Ink and Jerry were both a bit stronger than him. In his memories, Ruiwen's long sentences, especially those that were idle chatter and lacked a purpose, often appeared in her conversations with these two inhumans. On Luonan's side, her recent focus was completely placed on the exploration of the usable domain and plane fragments within the Misty Maze. What was displayed at the exit just now, as well as what was displayed in the virtual work area, were the reports of the exploration results. Chapter 11:14. I didn't come here to ask about the progress. Luonan really wanted to say this to Ruiwen, but doing so would be too deliberate. It would make the following exchanges more difficult. He could only grin. What did you discover? Fragments that might be suitable. Ruiwen was probably the person in this world who understood Luonan's pseudoplane plan the best. She didn't care about the practicality and feasibility of this plan. She just kept her head down in the mist maze, searching for the most suitable large-scale plane or domain fragment for Luonan to transform. In fact, the information about the existence of large-scale fragments within the mist maze was provided by Ruiwen in the first place. The mist maze was a fragmented world. Even the concept of a world wasn't accurate enough. It simply didn't possess the structure to bear material substance. According to Luonan's conjectures, it was extremely likely that it was the remnant of one or even several previous worlds that had been completely crushed by a terrifying power. Only the lowest level of law fragments were left behind. These were originally untouchable. At the very least, it was impossible for Luonan to come into contact with them with his perceptual abilities back then. The reason why an environment like the Mist Maze was formed was most likely because it was connected to the space and time of Earth. It was infected by the space and time here. Perhaps it was also coupled with the powerful radiation of Sunwheel Hell to complete the outer shell seal. Only then was there the scene of haze and sandstorm that could appear before Luonan and others. Luonan had already caught a glimpse of these possibilities after cultivating the magnetite mica jellyfish and borrowing its special clairvoyance mode. However, he still needed to utilize his own visualization and configuration construction abilities of the large coordinate system to move within the mist maze. He needed to open a path in the mountains and build a bridge in the rivers. This kind of mode was bound to have great limitations. Or perhaps it could be said, the mist maze only displayed Luonan's appearance as an existence. When he tried to construct a fulcrum for his existence, he had already formed a permanent change in the mist maze. This was a bit similar to the predicament other ability users faced when facing the storm of the Abyss region. Only Ruiwen, with her inconceivable talent of body and soul fusion, could transform into a similar form of existence. She could travel relatively freely in the misty maze, and she could even capture the relatively complete space-time signals within, resonating with the overlapping and distorted waves. If the compatibility was high, it was even possible to teleport to the other side. Generally speaking, fragments that were able to emit and retain a relatively complete signal in a highly complex and chaotic region were all fragments of a larger scale. Ruiwen had followed this train of thought to explore the depths of the mist labyrinth, and the results were basically in line with her guesses. Luonan would occasionally be able to capture this sort of signal within the tree-hole space that he had constructed himself. But he blushed with shame. The precision of his probing was far inferior to Ruiwen's natural talent. Therefore, the main force of exploration at this stage could only be Ruiwen. Frankly speaking, the process of Ruiwen's perception, resonance, matching, and even teleportation was hard for Luonan to understand with his current level of understanding. He only knew that there were certainly risks involved. Ruiwen would suffer minor injuries from time to time during the exploration process. It seemed that the degree of matching and resonance wasn't enough, and the forceful teleportation was the result. For this reason, Luonan gave orders to Ruiwen, telling her to avoid impatience. At the same time, Luonan treasured the results of Ruiwen's exploration very much. Every time he would thoroughly research and completely deny the feasibility of the modifications. Only then would he stop. Let's take a look first. Ruiwen gradually changed her method of communication due to her relatively poor ability to express herself. She no longer reported verbally. Instead, she used the notes she had prepared beforehand. It was very clear that Ruiwen had absorbed Luonan's note-taking methods in recent times. The presence of graphics far exceeded that of words within the contents of the notes. It was just that Rui Wen's note-taking abilities were built upon Luo Nan's solid foundation in sketching. Rui Wen's notes looked much more simple and unadorned. Alright. If Luo Nan didn't have a relatively complete understanding of the terrain of the Misty Labyrinth, it really wouldn't have been an easy matter to understand. Luo Nan scratched his head. He temporarily pushed aside the idea of how to communicate with Rui Wen. He did his best to translate the information that Rui Wen was trying to reveal from the concise graphics. You've made progress in drawing. Luo Nan first gave a word of praise. This wasn't a false statement. Rui Wen really had begun to feel a bit like drawing. At the very least there was a set pattern. It was just that the structural model of the work area was a bit too simple. Also, why did the virtual work area lag one after another? This caused the graphics that Rui Wen drew to look a bit awkward. Hold on. This was an animation. Luo Nan captured the continuous changes in the graphics during the lag process. He was actually a bit pleasantly surprised for a time. It was rare for Rui Wen to ponder over some other ideas. Her train of thought was clearly becoming more and more lively. But then he was puzzled. It must be said that the drawing software that Rui Wen used did indeed have an intelligent animation function. It could automatically complete an animation trajectory after a limited set of settings. But it wasn't professional enough. It was fine if it was used for a normal business demonstration, but it didn't seem to fit well with this sort of schematic diagram. But no matter how unsuitable it was, it shouldn't have lagged, right? Could it be that the enterprise-level computing chip he bought for Rui Wen was a defective product? Luo Nan was now an engineer with professional insight after going through Worker Zhai's long-term tutoring. His first thought was to cut out from the page and prepare to look at the bottom level. Huh? Luo Nan blinked. All of this wasn't important. The page that appeared wasn't the simple desktop that he expected. Instead, it was unexpectedly garish. It was clearly the UI of some social media. To be more specific, it was a discussion area under a certain topic. The topic was also marked with special words and colors. The demon-eyed woman. That's right. It was densely packed with discussions related to the demon-eyed woman, which was to say Rui Wen. Looking at the automatic refresh rate, it was extremely enthusiastic. This was really a bit unexpected. Actually, 3 or 4 days had passed. Whether it was the crisis of Shui Yuan's identity and standpoint, or the demon-eyed woman incident, the popularity of these topics was steadily declining on the surface. It was just that in some small circles, disputes would erupt due to various stances or inexplicable differences, causing the local popularity to remain high. It was very clear that Luo Nan was looking at such a page. This sort of circle wasn't rare in cyberspace. But in any case, he needed to take the initiative to search for it, right? Truly, truly unexpected. So it turned out that Rui Wen paid a lot of attention to this sort of matter. Luo Nan looked at Rui Wen and Rui Wen looked back at Luo Nan. Speaking of which, Luo Nan was already a bit worried that the little girl would fly into a rage out of humiliation. But when their eyes met, all he saw was pure and serene. On the contrary, Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. Originally, this was a very good entry point, but he forcefully pushed it back. He was completely subconsciously covering up for Rui Wen. He cut back to the interface. It seems like I processed too much data. What the hell? Cover up my ass. But the matter was just this absurd. Luo Nan was clearly making things up, but what he said just so happened to hit the crux of the problem. While he was messing around with the drawing software, he saw that the back end of the drawing software was actually processing hundreds and thousands of drawings. Perhaps even more drawing materials. This wasn't a professional animation software. With such an enormous amount of data, coupled with Rui Wen's high requirements, it was naturally impossible to handle. The lag was born from this. Why are you drawing so much? Luo Nan understood as soon as the question left his mouth. It was certainly because Rui Wen wanted to ensure the detailed effects of this animation. He could see that Rui Wen really attached great importance to this new discovery. I'll download a professional software for you later. Hey, instead of messing around with the software, it's better to go check it out on the spot. Rui Wen nodded, then she stood up. No, not now. There's no rush. Luo Nan finally recovered. He knew that if he were to return to the topic of the Misty Maze and continue the conversation, then the preset brother and sister night talk would basically fall apart. He took the initiative to press the pause button. Let's study this matter in detail tomorrow. Tomorrow was Friday. Was he going to let Rui Wen skip class? Small matter. Small matter. Luo Nan decisively bypassed this obstacle. He truly brought out the words he had already figured out. Oh Ruiwen, have you been running back and forth these past 2 days? Have you been too tired? Ruiwen shook her head and responded softly, I haven't. Then that's good. Luo Nan wanted to speak the following words, but he forcibly choked them off, making it hard for him to continue. This was because he suddenly came to a realization. He had just seen a new situation from Ruiwen that he had never seen before. He had never even thought of this new situation. He had prepared a plan for a heart-to-heart conversation, but now it was all for naught. At this sensitive time, the words spoken were like spilled water. It would be hard to take them back. Before this, Luo Nan really didn't think that Ruiwen had any psychological problems. At least he didn't think that his aunt would be worried about her. But right now he really couldn't grasp it. He wanted to play it safe. At the very least he wanted to discuss it with his aunt who had rich experience in educating others. He also wanted to observe her a bit more. And so Luo Nan could only start strong and finish weak. He said a few words of nonsense about striking a balance between work and rest and left in a hurry. Luo Nan was a bit at a loss after leaving the door. Going to find his aunt right now seemed to be a bit of an overreaction. Then, he simply gave Emoya a call. But the one who answered the phone was the manager of the Mountain Creek Band, the chubby sister Meng. Mr. Luo? Emoya and the others are performing. They transferred their signal to me. Is there something you need? Oh, I forgot. It's nothing. It's nothing. Only now did Luo Nan remember that Emoya wasn't home tonight. She had a performance assignment. Luo Nan hung up the phone and stared blankly for a moment. He hesitated for a moment, but he focused his mental senses on Ruiwen. From his perspective, this wasn't a big deal. He didn't do this in the past because he wanted to protect his privacy. He didn't want to make things awkward for Ruiwen with her own outstanding perceptual abilities. But now, through the special clairvoyance mode of the magnetic photon mica jellyfish, he shouldn't be able to sense it, right? Ruiwen shouldn't care even if she did sense it. Well, she wouldn't. Luo Nan cast his gaze over after completing the relevant mental preparations. Ruiwen was still sitting in the corner of the pitch-black room. She maintained the same posture as before, but her eyes were closed. The virtual work area was off. That's right. She didn't need to display it, so of course there was no need to keep it on. The problem was that Luo Nan had no way of knowing whether or not Ruiwen was resting with her eyes closed, or whether or not she was surfing the web through her retina projection. Luo Nan stared at her for a long time. He wasn't sure whether or not he had been discovered by Ruiwen. In any case, he hadn't discovered anything. This didn't give him any comfort. Instead, he felt his head swell. The problem was complicated. Chapter 11:15. So you're losing your head out of fear right now? Emoya, who hadn't returned for an entire night, called Luo Nan the next morning. She laughed quite unrestrainedly after listening to Luo Nan's account. Luo Nan frowned. How could it be that serious? You're acting like this. You're like parents who have muddled along for over a decade. When their child is in his rebellious phase or even later, they suddenly discover that their child is completely different from the growth model they expected. They feel that the product they nurtured for so many years is basically going to be scrapped. It's impossible to reforge it. Then they panic and despair, not knowing what to do. Isn't this the feeling? Luo Nan continued to deny. It's not that exaggerated. You're using this as an analogy. It seems like you've experienced it before. It's fine to just observe. Observe the mental processes of Mr. Mo Haihang and Mrs. Luo Shuqing a few years ago. You can more or less learn a few things. Of course, I've also gotten involved in this mess myself. Luo Nan's mind went blank. You. That's right. Did you forget? I'm the one who provided you with the Dream Fund. I funded a 10-year-old kid to do a drug experiment. Even though the results are pretty good and the return on investment is super high, I was quite anxious when I recovered from my second Chunibu. So your funding was the choice of a Chunibu. Could it not be? In order to take care of your so-called dream, there was an extremely high possibility of harvesting a younger brother who overdosed on drugs and died. Just thinking about it makes my hair stand on end, okay? As Emoya spoke, she also sighed. From this point, I can understand your current feelings. Thank you, little brother. You've worked hard. Emoya soon laughed. How should I put it? I still feel like you're overreacting. Even though you may be the one with the most power in the family, you don't need to burden yourself with Rui Wen's matters. You need to know that the loss of her memories before she entered the family wasn't caused by you. Even though she was brought into the family by you, you're just an older brother in terms of family ethics. You're not a parent. But Aunt, she certainly wants you to take responsibility, right? You might really be the person that Rui Wen wants to be close to the most. Even 10 sentences from others can't compare to a single sentence from you. But you still have to look beyond the surface to see the essence. Did my mother want you to be the head of the household? Come on, they still have a long way to go before they retire, and they're the kind of people who worry a lot. How stupid can they be to let you be the leader of this family? There seemed to be someone laughing beside Emoya. It should be a woman. But Luonan wasn't in the mood to pay attention to these things. He just pulled the corner of his mouth. Then what does Aunt mean? She only wants you to look inward and arrange a mission for you at home so that you will have a sense of belonging as a family member, instead of being a so-called world-class expert who goes to the upper class for no good reason and considers the life and death of mankind every day and night. Emoya concluded, this is a scheme, a family scheme. You're right. Luonan pondered for a moment and felt that it made some sense. But he soon came back to his senses. But aren't you off topic? What you've said to me, I admit it's reasonable, but Rui Wen, what's the situation? What should I do? This. Emoya was clearly stumped. When all is said and done, you don't know. I only have you as my experience in inexplicable success. I'm going to take this out to deal with Rui Wen. Let's not talk about anything else. Can you be at ease? Emoya's reply was bold and confident, but she soon admitted, her reaction really is quite unexpected. Luonan sighed. Emoya seemed to be talking to someone beside her. A short period of time passed before she spoke again. Don't think too much right now. People like you will go overboard when you think about things. But it's not necessary right now. It's best to observe first. Of course, you can't observe her in a monotonous and simple comfort zone. You need to push her into a relatively complex environment. My mom is more proactive than you in this regard. We don't blindly believe in Rui Wen at this time. We believe in the ability of this family to protect her. Luonan went, oh. Besides, there's still you. Even if there are some problems or accidents, you'll definitely be able to fish her out in time, right? Definitely. Luonan still had this sort of confidence. Then it's settled. You don't need to worry about Rui when suffering any psychological trauma or the like. A person's character is often warped and expanded under layers upon layers of obstacles. In the end, it is molded. Some people are simply chiseled with knives and axes. From childhood to adulthood, from birth to death, they are all molded and changed. Isn't this an unavoidable process? The process of molding a character isn't a disaster. Even molding a freak isn't counted. Only by completely negating its existence from its roots. That's it. Luonan blinked his eyes. Even though it's great reasoning, it sounds pretty good. So please seriously consider whether or not Rui Wen wants to seize this opportunity to make her debut. It's nothing. What I'm saying is that you can first observe her situation in the school environment when she's not skipping class. Right now Luonan was sitting inside gear on the north bank. He was sitting in a leisure booth in the public activity area at the edge of the sandbar waterway. He was speechless for a time. How could he explain the fact that Rui Wen had blatantly skipped most of her morning classes and was already heading in this direction to meet up with him? Forget it. Luonan slapped Jerry's head, who had popped out from who knows where. He decided not to think about this sort of lousy matter this morning. He hung up the phone and drank the fruit juice on the table in 2 or 3 gulps. He asked for another cup for Rui Wen, preparing to pack it up and take it down to the underground laboratory. This little girl shouldn't like to be in front of people. Luonan was absent-minded for a moment. Was this shouldn't what he was thinking? No matter what, he shouldn't verify this matter for the time being. Brother. Nan. Someone suddenly greeted him. When he said brother, he was clearly a bit restrained. This was mainly because he was in front of people. Luonan actually greeted Senior Tian, in a very natural manner. The person who came was Tian Chi of Acumen College's Advanced Teaching Department. He was also Senior Tian Xi's cousin, and he was older than Luonan by 3 to 4 years. He called Luonan brother in his heart. After all, he was a child who had been beaten up by the reality of society. He just couldn't wipe his face off in front of people. However, Xianxi's gaze followed the illumination lights and cast into the bottom of the lake. He saw the enormous devil ray swimming lazily in the deep waters, and his greeting became even more sincere. "Brother Nan, it's been a while since I've seen you in the society. I heard you took a leave of absence from school?" "Yeah. I've been running around a bit more lately. Even when I come, I usually go to the laboratory." I understand. Tianqi's gaze unconsciously glanced at the devil ray at the bottom of the lake. Actually, many people in the Mystic Arts Research Society knew that this dangerous mutant that had been tamed disappeared for a period of time last month. It only returned at the beginning of this month. There were even fewer people who knew that the main character of the video of the devil ray flying through the sky that had been wildly popular in Xia City at the beginning of last month was probably the devil ray at the bottom of the lake. As for the highly blurry figure in the video, forget it. He didn't dare to think about it. Though he didn't dare to think about it too deeply, Tianqi still unconsciously moved closer when he saw Luo Nan. It was good to say a few words. Luo Nan's polite attitude made his nervous state of mind ease a bit. Right when he wanted to chat a bit more, he saw Luo Nan wave his hand behind him. The fat-headed and big-eared Jerry had leaped out a bit earlier than Luo Nan. Tianqi turned his head and saw Rui Wen appear at the entrance of the public activity area. She was wearing the standard summer dress of Acumen College. Jerry rushed directly to Rui Wen's feet. He wanted to move closer, but he was a bit afraid. He just circled around her feet. Rui Wen had to bend over to pick Jerry up and bring him over. It was quite eye-catching to see a middle and low-grade student appear here during class time. The lively muskrat that moved closer intensified this impression. However, Rui Wen's face was even more eye-catching. They could faintly hear someone exclaim in surprise over at the public activity area. "Hold on. This is the Demon Eye woman, right? Short hair, black eyes, fair skin, and a beautiful appearance. She looks like... especially that skin. She's from our school." The students of Acumen College possessed the most basic qualities. They suppressed their voices when they exclaimed in surprise. But there weren't many people here to begin with. The corner of the bar was relatively quiet, so the sounds of exclamations and whispers were particularly clear. Luo Nan and Rui Wen obviously heard them loud and clear. Luo Nan looked over there and saw that Rui Wen's jade porcelain-like face didn't fluctuate at all. She was completely unaware that she had become the center of everyone's gazes. Tianqi also heard them. He knew of this fact earlier than the vast majority of the people here, even though he and Rui Wen had only met a few times. He grinned and took advantage of the fact that Rui Wen hadn't come over yet to come closer. He whispered, "There are quite a few people who are crazy about Rui Wen in the society. Seems like some people have already guessed it. I heard that OK has already gotten someone to inquire about Rui Wen's contact information." "OK? Oh, it's that vice president." Luo Nan's impression was that he seemed to be a rather pretentious young man. As for Rui Wen's identity being leaked, it wasn't strange. After all, this little girl was a frequent customer of the Mystic Arts Research Society. Her appearance and temperament were especially outstanding. It was very normal for her to leave an impression on others. Luo Nan smiled at Tianqi. "Rui Wen's here. Let's go do an experiment. We'll talk next time." "Sure. You busy yourself." Tianqi was already very content to be able to exchange a few words with Luo Nan. He saw Rui Wen walk over with Jerry in her arms. He stood up and helped her pull out a nearby chair before leaving. However, Rui Wen didn't have any intentions of sitting down. She just looked at Luo Nan. Luo Nan wanted to chat with her some more, but when he saw the little girl's calm and wooden expression as well as the drinks that were already packed in his hand, he sighed in the end. "Let's go." Luo Nan and Rui Wen didn't do any experiments in Gear's underground laboratory. Instead, they quickly jumped to the cloud world and entered the misty maze. They went to do the on-the-spot investigation they had agreed on last night. Of course, the on-the-spot investigation was impossible. The area that Rui Wen could currently reach was still out of Luo Nan's reach. Rui Wen clearly had her own considerations regarding this point. Within the treehole space that Luo Nan had created to carry material matter, Rui Wen brought up the offline mode drawing software. She referred to the previous records and cast her gaze into the area of the sandstorm outside. At the same time, some of the chaotic fragments that whistled through the air displayed a few special trajectories. They gradually took shape and formed into a scale. They were like thousands of ravines in the depths of the shattered wilderness. There was an underground river that meandered and flowed. Chapter 11:16. Wow! Rui Wen's move was very beautiful. Luo Nan knew that Rui Wen had used some sort of method to transfer the sketches stored in her drawing software into the mist maze. This allowed the fragments of her domain to possess activity for a short period of time, becoming the medium for her drawings. This was similar to Luo Nan's previous demonstration using water vapor, but the difficulty was far higher. First of all, a domain fragment was a domain fragment. No matter how fragmented it was, no matter how sealed it was, its essence was still the direct embodiment of a law. Its material structure was countless times more complex than the water vapor that Luo Nan controlled. Regardless of whether it was material energy or soul force interference, the effects of such a carrier would be greatly reduced. Luo Nan had opened up the space of the tree hole within the misty labyrinth from nothing. He was the clearest about the difficulty of this place. Secondly, Luo Nan didn't see Rui Wen operate this set of animations. She displayed the connections and rich details of the tens of thousands of drawings stored in the drawing software in an orderly manner. Yes, Luo Nan didn't see Rui Wen's manual operation when she demonstrated the animation. At the very least, he didn't see the follow-up operation at all. Rui Wen just gave him the initial power, and then all the changes naturally occurred and continued to evolve. It was as if Rui Wen had programmed the fragments of this boundless domain beforehand. As long as a switch was pressed, all the fragments would operate according to the preset rules. Something didn't seem right. Luo Nan faintly felt a bit awkward. He wanted to analyze it more seriously, but the content that Rui Wen displayed attracted his attention at this time. This seems to be... Luo Nan snapped his fingers and the lens nebula suddenly expanded from a miniaturized state at the very center of the second level of the tree hole space. It was like a gradually magnified starry sky scene in a lens, revealing more and more details. It was useless to have too many details. Of course Luo Nan was able to see that Rui Wen's drawing had been simplified to a certain degree. He had scaled the lens nebula to a similar scale, making it a bit more intuitive. Luo Nan made a slight comparison and came to a preliminary conclusion. This radiation zone hasn't been monitored yet and you're relying on the inner layer. You don't want to live anymore. He unconsciously raised his voice and glared at Rui Wen. You're already listening in, Raven replied. There's no result at all, okay? If you take another step forward, won't you run into this Sunwheel Extreme prison? Do you still want to live? It's still a long way off. Rui Wen's reply was even simpler. Luo Nan pressed her head. Is the concept of near and far appropriate here? Rui Wen remained silent. As long as Luo Nan had the time in the near future, he would certainly go to the tree hole space to conduct an eavesdrop. He would also make the relevant records. He would combine the boundless fragmented data with Rui Wen's search records to slowly trace the outline of the misty maze. He didn't dare to say that he had a complete grasp of it, but he had a general understanding of it. The core of the maze was, of course, the Sunwheel Extreme Hell. It was a place where the two unimaginable forces of order and chaos locked together. It was both violent and balanced. Luo Nan didn't know how far the other side was from him. The concept of near and far wasn't suitable to be used here. All he could sense was the pull and radiation of this powerful existence. It was very likely that what he had been paying attention to all this time was just a projection. The main body was still countless light years away. But it was also possible that he would fall into the fatal gravitational sphere if he took another step into the misty labyrinth. It would be impossible for him to climb out. Luo Nan had consecutively created two world-class events, the light of the polar domain and the daytime nightmare, within half a year. He understood the terror of the Sunwheel Extreme Hell better than anyone else. Therefore he could only stay a respectful distance away. He even had to intentionally distinguish and avoid the eavesdropping. The remaining areas that could be eavesdropped and traced were the main parts of the lenticular nebula. Basically, they were the perceptible areas that had been contaminated by the local spacetime rules of Earth. Luo Nan made a simple division of them. The first type was the radiation zone. It seemed that the two grand forces of the Sunwheel Extreme Hell had collided in opposite directions within these areas. It was unknown how many years had passed since the collision, but the shockwaves were still tenaciously continuing without stopping. Of course, it was more likely that they were affected by the powerful and contradictory radiation of the sun-wheel extreme hell, resulting in the continuous impact and collision. They also carried out a complex fusion. It was as if they were verifying the interlocking equilibrium of the sun-wheel extreme hell, but they weren't completely successful. This was the main melody of the Misty Labyrinth. The other type was the safe zone. Luo Nan's Luo clan's sandwich domain, which bore the space of the tree hole, was located in the relatively quiet periphery. These areas were clearly affected by the local spacetime of Earth. They were the main forces that collided and formed the cloud world. Currently, they could be considered the underlying structure of the cloud world. Strictly speaking, the distribution of this structure didn't have the concept of up, down, and four directions. The division between the inside and the outside was very blurry. It was highly complex and highly distorted, going against the daily experience of humans. It wasn't even easy to describe. The lenticular nebula only displayed a distorted projection. In essence, it was still a database. A deeper analysis was needed. Luo Nan's daily eavesdropping on the Misty Labyrinth was like a passive radar. Although the amount of data he processed was large and there was a lot of noise, he was able to avoid making contact with the sun-wheel extreme hell. He did the basic work bit by bit. It was solid and safe. He wasn't the only one who was safe. Ruiwen was safe as well. As long as he was effectively eavesdropping, the little girl should be able to come and go freely in the safe zone and even within the range of the eavesdropped on the radiation zone with her ability of body and soul merging. From Luo Nan's perspective, Ruiwen's reconnaissance shouldn't have been done with the mindset of taking risks and searching for treasures. Instead, she should have helped his eavesdropping to carry out verification. Actually, it was precisely Ruiwen that allowed Luo Nan to take many detours. She reduced a large amount of useless work. Luo Nan was able to quickly digest and absorb the results of his father's observations in the past month. If it wasn't for the requirements of the pseudo-plane. Damn. In the end, it was still his problem. Luo Nan was vexed. He couldn't help but press a few more times on Ruiwen's head. Things weren't over yet. Ruiwen had run into the radiation zone without effective eavesdropping. Her nature could be called dangerous, but it didn't have much to do with the awkwardness from before. Luo Nan calmed his mind a bit. The animation of Ruiwen's demonstration flashed endlessly in his mind. It corresponded with the area within the lens nebula that he had just begun eavesdropping on not too long ago. It was a familiar yet unfamiliar area. He tossed aside the details that he couldn't delve into and just locked onto the skeleton depicted in Ruiwen's sketch. It was probably a few relatively large fragments of the domain or the fusion of fragments. These large masses of things were manifested on the lens nebula in the form of a fuzzy halo of stars. There were a few slightly bright stars scattered in the center. And under the cover of these stars was the final target that Ruiwen had pointed out. It was just that this final target seemed to be hidden a bit too deep within the current lens nebula. And the location wasn't quite right. Luo Nan suddenly had a guess. He aimed at the area that Ruiwen had displayed. He even wanted to use his hands to measure the star atlas. This wasn't necessary. The eavesdropping and mapping image of the area was the result of his and Ruiwen's hard work. The answer actually lingered in his mind. Using his eyes and his hands was nothing more than confirmation. Yes. Strictly speaking, the image of the radiation zone without effective eavesdropping on the lens nebula was different from the final image of Ruiwen's demonstration. And it wasn't the same as the one at the very front. Luo Nan felt that Ruiwen's drawing skills were immature at first. Her simplification wasn't appropriate enough, resulting in a distortion. But now, let me see those drawings. Ruiwen obviously wouldn't refuse. She immediately brought up the work area and displayed the tens of thousands of drawings in the background. Due to the large amount of data to be processed, the refresh process wasn't too smooth. Luo Nan couldn't care about this. He directly got to work and quickly flipped through the work area, flipping through these drawings from front to back. This could more or less be considered a manual broadcast of an animation. But the broadcast didn't take too long. Soon, the first half of the several thousand drawings arranged in order appeared. If the evolution process displayed by these several thousand drawings was described as a 10-second video, then the one Luo Nan locked onto would be in the region of half a second. Though it had undergone simplification, it highly corresponded with the structure of the star atlas displayed on the lens nebula. There was practically no difference. It seemed that this one was the present. Then, Luo Nan pursed his lips and turned his head to begin controlling the lens nebula. There was no doubt that the structural details of the mist labyrinth were constantly changing. One had to accept this in order to observe it accurately. One had to adapt to this. For this reason, even though the data that constituted the star atlas could be described as a sea of data, both Luo Nan and Luo Zhongheng did their best to preserve the crucial process data. They recorded the instantaneous appearance of every node of the mist labyrinth. Blurry was counted as well. Luo Nan was tracing back to the previous records. He slowly pushed the structure of the mist labyrinth displayed on the star atlas forward. Actually, he was completely capable of retrieving a single photograph. Even if the lens nebula was intrinsically distorted and unreal, the astronomical amount of data was placed there. It would consume quite a bit of mental effort to realize the dynamic changes. But Luo Nan felt that it was very necessary. Thus, after approximately 5 days or so, it was still the same cluster of stars that alternated between light and dark. However, the main skeleton that was constructed from the bright stars, after a slight adjustment of the angle and position, astonishingly formed a nearly perfect correspondence with Rui Wen's initial sketch. Luo Nan also confirmed a step further. This process of tracing back was simply the first half of Rui Wen's demonstration animation, played backwards. Alright. This is the past. Then the ones that haven't been monitored yet. Are they the future? Luo Nan stopped. His forehead and the back of his head were slightly sweating. One reason was because of the mental effort consumed. The other reason was because he suddenly discovered that his talent and strength towards Rui Wen. He never understood it from start to finish. Chapter 11:17. Luo Nan had sensed something during Rui Wen's demonstration just now. During the entire process, Rui Wen had only used her initial power from beginning to end. She had pushed the initial sketch and then everything had operated according to the established procedure. There really hadn't been any other interference in the middle. Luo Nan's awkward feeling stemmed from this. He had misunderstood earlier. Rui Wen hadn't drawn the results of her own observations into images and then demonstrated them. She had merely wanted to display the scene that had just occurred for him to see. To be more precise, there had never been any results of observation. That star atlas formed from the monitoring data corresponded to the nodes of Rui Wen's sketch. The closest set of nodes had just reached the first 2020 of the star atlas. Nothing had happened yet. How could there be any observations? In other words, this was a set of foresight. It foretold the development and evolution of a portion of the radiation region of the mist labyrinth in the future. Luo Nan cast his gaze towards the lens nebula. He felt the astronomical amount of data corresponding to every instant within. He thought about the amount of computation required for the dissipation and convergence of every detail. He went silent for a time. Of course, this was just a guess. As for whether or not it was true, it was still faster to ask Rui Wen. Rui Wen, is this the result of your predictions? Rui Wen thought for a moment and answered, I see a bit. I see. Luo Nan didn't know how to respond for a time. Rui Wen rarely used rhetorical techniques when she spoke. She usually wouldn't say things like descriptions or comparisons. So when she said she saw it, she really saw it? It would have been very hard for Luo Nan to think about this a month ago. But during this time, the inconceivable perceptual mode that came from the magnetic optical mica was gradually changing Luo Nan's observation and thought patterns. The appearance of this world was becoming more and more different from what it had always displayed over the past decade. Whether it was living things, inanimate objects, material objects, or the void. Everything revealed a different structure and connection under the bizarre perspective of the magnetic optical mica. Right now Luo Nan was doing his best to adjust and adapt. He hoped that this difference wouldn't turn into a tear. Looking at the normal world was already like this. What Luo Nan saw and felt when he observed the mist labyrinth was different from before. It was just that this place was far too chaotic and complex even under the special perspective of the magnetic optical mica. And the amount of data excavated had increased by an order of magnitude. Luo Nan needed to comb it a step further before he could hope to restore it to effective information. Since he was like this, who knew what this world was like in Rui Wen's eyes? Rui Wen was most likely unable to understand the complex train of thought within Luo Nan's mind. Since Luo Nan had asked her, she obviously had to answer to the best of her abilities. Right now Luo Nan had already brought up the lens nebula. Rui Wen gestured at the more intuitive star atlas. There's one here or maybe two. It's a bit dangerous right now. After a while it'll be thrown out to this position. If it was someone else listening to Rui Wen's explanation, they would definitely be confused. Luo Nan immediately understood. You're saying that within this area, there are one or two large-scale domain fragments that will be affected by the collision of the ramming radiation zone. They will be thrown from a relatively deep location to a relatively safe area. They might be more suitable for remodeling? Rui Wen nodded. This was something that the radiation zone was capable of doing. Such a phenomenon seemed a little counterintuitive at first glance. The center of the contradiction or the storm should have a stronger impact, and the remaining debris should also be finer. But the problem was that the mist maze, which was a special environment caused by sunwheel hell, could not be simply regarded as the result of the collision and explosion. What was displayed in the broken structure was a mutual restriction, mutual influence and mutual distortion mechanism. The next step forward was order. The next step after order was chaos. The present was only a temporary equilibrium. This sort of equilibrium mechanism formed a complex gravitational sphere. It was just like what commonly happened in the boundless universe. All things were destroyed and reconstructed, but they were no longer their original appearances. And this led to a direct result. The closer one got to the danger zone of the gravitational sphere, the more resources one could use. The chances of picking up scraps in the periphery were far too low. Luo Nan sighed and rubbed Rui Wen's scalp with force. So you know the danger. It can be used. Rui Wen didn't resist. She just emphasized this point once more. Since you said it, of course I believe you. It was rare for Rui Wen to say such accurate words. Luo Nan really didn't dare to refuse. He was afraid that this little girl would take things too hard and run into the radiation zone to dig anew. It would be good to take advantage of this opportunity to let her slow down. Since it was decided, Luo Nan subconsciously began to draw up a plan in his mind. According to Rui Wen's demonstration of the transformation process, it would take around 3 months for 1 or 2 large-scale domain fragments to be thrown out. It could be said that time was ample, but it could also be said that he was nervous. First, he needed to conduct a step further of monitoring. He needed to gather more data and verify the trend of transformation that Rui Wen demonstrated. Doing this to the radiation zone would more or less require some risk. It was just that it couldn't be compared to what Rui Wen had experienced. Naturally, he needed to arrive there and make contact with that place. Only then could he truly confirm and carry out the transformation project. But even at the end of Rui Wen's demonstration, the location of the large-scale fragment was at the edge of the radiation zone. This edge wasn't a simple outer region. It was a relatively safe zone within the distorted maze structure. He needed to properly plan his route if he wanted to arrive. This was a very severe challenge. If he failed, he would fall into the radiation zone. He would be pulled by the gravitational sphere, and it was very likely that he would have to face the onslaught of the sunwheel hell once more. In other words, I need to make preparations to detonate and endure the daytime nightmare once more. At least once. Luo Nan muttered to himself as he sorted out his thoughts. In this case, he needed to wait until the altar's spiderweb was completely restored for the sake of safety. Only with this safety net could he buffer and precipitate the flood of information that he was unable to digest. Luo Nan even thought that even with this safety net he couldn't use it too many times. Not to mention the limits of what he could endure, the occasional daytime nightmare could be attributed to a natural phenomenon as much as possible, or it could be concealed by an occasional accident. But if it were to appear at a high frequency, some people would certainly discover some clues. Yes, Luo Nan was referring to the awesome High Lord of Secret Contract, the one who monitored the abyssal region all year round. Of course, there was also Li Wei. If they were to really discover some clues, it would be a great deal of trouble in the future. It's best if I don't do it more than once. Luo Nan raised his standards. Rui Wen didn't quite understand. She turned to look at him. Luo Nan locked gazes with the young girl's deep and pure eyes. He subconsciously exerted force to rub her head. Rui Wen didn't say a word, allowing him to rub her head. It must be said that Rui Wen's talent had already reached a level that defied common sense. Though talent itself was a certain distance away from common sense, no matter how strong it was, it still needed to conform to basic laws, right? When a certain ability far exceeded the scope of a race's inheritance, far exceeded the prior perceptual regulations of a race. Even if it was a difference of one or more dimensions, it wouldn't be as simple as a folktale like the opening of Heaven's Eye. Sometimes, the fantasies of humans far exceeded the regulations of reality. But when these fantasies truly materialized and appeared before the eyes of people, she really was like a humanoid fantasy breed. This thought, it was too excessive. Luo Nan quickly rubbed Rui Wen's head twice, and the young girl tilted her head a bit doubtfully. Luo Nan increased his strength and revealed a smile to the young girl. But at this moment he couldn't avoid letting go of his thoughts. Was Rui Wen's ability really a talent that belonged to humans? If it was, where was the foundation? If it wasn't, where did it come from? Well, Luo Nan could roughly guess a bit. After leaving the misty maze, Luo Nan let Rui Wen return to class. He quickly dialed a number. Mr. Blood Demon, I want to ask you about something. Right now, Blood Demon was already a key figure in Luo Nan's communication with the Eye of Secret Deeds and the Starry Sky Club. This person was deeply involved in the follow-up global census project. Everyone was already very familiar with each other, so Luo Nan bluntly asked, "How much do you know about Li Wei's Apocalypse Laboratory and the Bloodline Project? Why did you suddenly think of asking about this?" The Blood Demon chuckled. It was obvious that he was adjusting his mind. "Aren't you preparing for the global census? Speaking of which, I've been waiting for you here in Ha City for quite some time. It's a mess over here." Luo Nan was a bit dissatisfied with Blood Demon's vague attitude. He responded, "Can't I investigate the Bloodline Project in Ha City?" "Oh, what rumors did you hear?" Blood Demon's tone tightened a bit, becoming much more solemn. It seemed like there was a mistake. Luo Nan's mind stirred slightly and his words became a bit vague. "There weren't any rumors. I'm just interested in a few special talents." Blood Demon responded with a question. "Which one of us isn't a special talent?" Luo Nan responded calmly. "The kind that far surpasses the level of human life? In any case, it's not me." Blood Demon laughed heartily as if he had heard the most absurd joke in the world. Okay. I have a general idea of what's going on. As for the Apocalypse Laboratory, to be honest, I've researched and understood them before, but I'm basically at the level of hearing wind and rain. There's no harm in asking more questions. Combining the opinions from all sides will never deviate too much from the truth. That's not necessarily true. The Apocalypse Laboratory is different from the Deep Blue Laboratory. The Apocalypse Laboratory is Li Wei's old foundation. It's a treasure. What's released right now might all be interference bullets. The Bloodline Project is also interference bullets? That depends on what kind of Bloodline Project you're talking about. Blood Demon listed them one by one. Is it a project to restore the youth of those old fellows whose necks are buried in the soil? Or is it a project to help humans unlock the genetic lock and make breakthroughs on the path of evolution? Or is it the legendary perfect template that can be used as a reference? Luo Nan thought for a moment. I feel like our tastes are about the same. Which one are you most interested in? Oh my, I'm really overwhelmed by the favor. Blood Demon was laughing on the surface, slippery, but he was very cooperative when it came to this. If it were me, I would obviously be more interested in the perfect template. Luo Nan muttered to himself. I remember Black Lion saying that the Bloodline Project is conducted with reference to the perfect template for research. Don't blame me for biting off more than I can chew. The connotation and extension of the word, perfect, is enormous. Blood Demon interrupted Luo Nan's words. What level is perfect? A perfect person lives for over 100 years, never escaping from birth, old age, sickness and death. A perfect god. That's a level that our imaginations can't reach. Someone came up with this kind of name. He's up to no good. Luo Nan frowned. The main point of your words is. The main point is still the name. Blood Demon chuckled. Don't you want to confirm this? Chapter 11:18. No, I just wanted to ask about Rui Wen. But now you've changed the topic. Luo Nan wasn't sure if Blood Demon had truly misunderstood, or if it was intentional. At a time like this, listening more and talking less was correct, but it was hard to understand without a head or tail. Luo Nan added vaguely, you can help me sort out the clues. Blood Demon gladly agreed. There are some things I need to ponder over. The Deep Blue Project has been in development for less than a decade. The related products come one generation after another. The military's similar self-research projects are suppressed to the point where they can't lift their heads. The Bloodline Project was established a generation earlier than Deep Blue. Not a single reliable rumor has leaked out, but there are still people madly pouring money into it. As far as I know, similar projects that are unrelated to the Apocalypse Laboratory have received less and less sponsorship in recent years. Especially the funding from the top circles of the rich and powerful. Oh my, it's truly a tragic sight. What does this mean? It means that your investment has failed. Luo Nan responded in his mind for the first time, but he remained silent in reality. The blood demon didn't have the ability of telepathy. He continued, is it because those rich people who have buried their necks in the soil are staking it all on one throw? Do they trust Li Wei that much? Do they trust this highly dangerous fellow of unknown origin? I can believe that one person is retarded, but all of them are retarded. It's better to believe that Li Wei has cast a collective curse on them. Luo Nan felt that blood demon could be a bit more direct. So, brother, you need to know that Li Wei is a fellow who is very good at persuading people. He is the expert who knows how to fight for research funding. He's on a completely different level than those great hoodwinkers who are used to using PowerPoint to tell stories. He's much better at using facts. At the very least, the salivating prospects that are based on a partial truth to convince people. The Li Wei that blood demon spoke of sounded more like the boss of a school. Luo Nan's lips twitched. So, the results of the Bloodline Project have already been placed before those people's eyes. They have obtained approval. Yes, they should have achieved extraordinary success. Luo Nan's mind suddenly stirred when he said the word, extraordinary. A few faintly discernible figures quickly flashed through his mind, but his mouth didn't pause. If you want to prove your success, you have to do it in a circle that's neither too big nor too small. Success itself needs some fame, but you have to do it discreetly. Most of the time you have to change your appearance. It's still success, but what they think of as success is different from what we think of as success. In the end, the Bloodline Project is a project to study people. Its most convincing results are also people. Such as Rui when Luo Nan's understanding of the Bloodline Project suddenly deepened by a level as he thought back to the matter of the 2000th young miss. That was how it was strung together. No wonder the blood demon kept mentioning names, after he suspected that there was a misunderstanding. It was true that only the names that were deeply related to the Bloodline Project could prove the real value of the Bloodline Project. If he added the keywords that caused the blood demon's misunderstanding, Ha City, which famous person in Ha City? Forgive Luo Nan for his shallow knowledge, but he only knew of one person. Apollyon. The one who was publicly acknowledged as one of the 16 strongest extraordinaries, the one who dominated the new continent, and the one who formed a restrictive contract with the High Lord of the Secret Contract, was actually related to the Bloodline Project? In that case, what was the purpose of High Lord's Secret Contracts challenge? The background behind the scenes was much more complicated than what he knew. Luo Nan couldn't figure it out for a time. Naturally, he had to ask again. But there was no need to mention Apollyon's name at this time. The main thing was that he could feel that the name Blood Demon spoke of was not singular but plural. So he might as well speak a bit more openly. Mr. Blood Demon, I'll ask you this. There are less than 100 extraordinaries standing at the apex of the world right now. How many of them are related to the Bloodline Project? Or perhaps they were released by the Apocalypse Laboratory. These words lingered in Luo Nan's chest. Luo Nan's mind was truly awed when he actually said them. Li Wei's influence on Earth had already reached such a deep level? It was probably because Blood Demon had long since made up his mind. Luo Nan just laughed out loud when he pointed it out. From what I'm saying, anyone who is close to the Apocalypse Laboratory and Li Wei is a suspect. There's no need to talk about Wang Yong that day on the ship. It's possible that Tu Gu. Thousands of miles away, Luo Nan shook his head slightly when Blood Demon spoke of Tu Gu. But he didn't interrupt Blood Demon's words. Luo Nan continued to listen. A bit more extreme. After Li Wei took control of the Deep Blue World and established the Apocalypse Laboratory, any extraordinaries who are close to him are suspects. After all, the extraordinaries have only appeared for 30 years or so from the time they have grown to their current scale. It's not a short time, but it's far too fast when it comes to the level of human evolution. It's so fast that it feels unreal. It would be a bit easier for me to accept if someone was manipulating things from behind. This sort of thinking was really hard to accept, right? Especially when you're an extraordinary. Luo Nan's eyebrows jumped. This fellow blood demon seemed to have a carefree and uninhibited appearance. but his mind was unexpectedly a bit dark. You're quite confident in Li Wei. Well, I just hope that you can take things a step further before you go to Ha City. After all, the entire world knows that you're competing with Li Wei. You can't not understand the weight on the other side before you go to the boxing stage, right? Blood Demon spoke in a candid manner. We can be considered to be on the same side right now. I have to do a bit of a reminder. A reminder that Li Wei's energy is beyond imagination? Luo Nan grew more and more suspicious that Blood Demon's misunderstanding today was intentional. This fellow seemed to have been waiting for such an opportunity. Blood Demon chuckled. Speaking of energy, I've thought of another example. You should know that the situation here isn't too good. Yes, I know. Though Luo Nan resided in Xia City, he was constantly paying attention to Ha City, the center of the storm of the mutant infection outbreak. He was even secretly drawing portraits of the large quantities of mutant-infected people in the city, establishing a model for the step selection of Phase 2 infected people. Plus, he had gathered all sorts of news and intelligence reports. His understanding of Ha City was no less than anyone else's. You understand the situation of Phase 2 and Phase 3 as well? It's very troublesome. Luo Nan responded simply. He searched for 2 more keywords: riots. Lack of food. Yeah. Lack of food. Blood Demon chuckled. In modern society, words like lack of food, or the more serious term famine, seem to be extremely far away. But in Ha City right now, these words went from pure concepts to gradually becoming reality. Due to the mutant infection being completely out of control, the number of infected people in Ha City increased explosively. There were also large amounts of highly dangerous people who were transforming from Phase 2 to Phase 3. The mutant process of these people was already irreversible. Their primordial genes had collapsed and mutated. They were rapidly transforming in the direction of mutant species. This transformation process was extremely fast, and it involved a mutation on the fleshly plane. It was necessary to absorb large amounts of squandered energy in a short period of time. Such an energy requirement was destined to be impossible to satisfy with 3 normal meals a day. Therefore, the infected in this stage would transform into the craziest of predators. Under the drive of chaotic and manic emotions, they would seize all resources that they could use. Things that could be edible and digestible were included. From ordinary food to other fleshly creatures including people. In a normal city, the appearance of 1 or 2 infected people like this could lead to a series of bloody cases. And in today's Ha City, there were far more than 1 or 200 or even 1 or 2,000 infected people. Thus, riots, massacres and even famines emerged as the times required. Mutant conversion was an inefficient energy intake method that relied on probability. It would inevitably lead to a large amount of waste. In addition to the influence of social unrest, Ha City's basic mode of existence as a modern metropolis had nearly completely collapsed. Luo Nan was recalling and also monitoring Ha City's situation in real time. If Ha City continues to be in this state, the aid will not be able to keep up. It will be hard to avoid a great famine. However, the current situation is more of a temporary phenomenon caused by accidents, right? There was no need for secret intelligence. Right now, a few conservative news channels were reporting over and over again. Ha City's largest cultivation buildings had caught fire and exploded due to the effects of the riots. The energy supply lines were destroyed, and a considerable portion of the food that was about to be harvested and sold on the market was destroyed. This caused the price of food in the city to skyrocket. The citizens were panic-stricken and panic-stricken. Bread was hard to find. Let's not discuss lack of food, or famine, today. Blood Demon chuckled twice. The example I'm looking for is actually the cultivation buildings. You know that the cultivation buildings were one of the most important foundational supports for several dozen large metropolises to be built after World War III. Right now, the world's population of 10 billion has already recovered to the level it was before World War III. The population of 10 billion before World War III was basically the limit that the world could bear. After World War III, the world's arable land area exploded from 17 million square kilometers to 1.7 million square kilometers. Under these circumstances, the world was able to support the same number of people even though it had shrunk by 90%. That's right. Luo Nan knew this knowledge since he was in elementary school. The cultivation buildings were undoubtedly the crystallization of the world's agricultural, chemical and energy technologies that advanced by leaps and bounds. It was also a necessary test point for geography or biology tests. Blood Demon suddenly asked, "What is the essence of the cultivation buildings?" Luo Nan answered without hesitation, "Energy in exchange for output." "Where does energy come from?" "Fusion reactors." "Where does fusion reactors come from?" "From..." Luo Nan was suddenly stuck. He didn't continue for a time. Blood Demon continued to ask him, unwilling to let him go. "Where does fusion reactors come from? Who holds the technology patents? Why is it that before World War III, the practical application of fusion reactors was always 50 years later? Why did this technology suddenly mature after the war when everything was in ruins? It went from practical application to miniaturization in one go?" Luo Nan couldn't answer. Blood Demon still didn't give up. At present, fusion reactors still use magnetic confinement fusion technology. Room temperature superconductors must be used to form an ultra-strong magnetic field. Where does this special cutting-edge material come from? Where? Luo Nan asked, knowing the answer. Blood Demon's answer was nothing new. Deep Blue World. Li Wei sighed. Chapter 11:19. This time Luo Nan just chuckled twice. Blood Demon gave him a few words of explanation. The Deep Blue World has a special mineral deposit that doesn't exist on Earth. The Apocalypse Laboratory calls it progenitor. Its specific properties aren't too clear, but it's said to be a half-energized marvel. It's extremely difficult to harvest. Some intelligence says that it's impossible to do with the current level of technology. Of course, it's hard to say whether or not Li Wei can succeed. Progenitor? Is it the type that the Deep Blue Walkers use as fuel for their backup energy system? Luo Nan had done in-depth research on the Deep Blue platform. He immediately flipped through the relevant information in his mind. That's progenitor with low purity. To be precise, it's just the impurities of or that have received the energy radiation of progenitor. It's formed through special purification techniques. It can barely be considered a companion ore. No, it really can't be considered a companion ore. The true companion ore is none other than the super strong magnetic field that wraps the progenitor or within the ghost stone. This is the origin of the superconducting revolution after World War III. The electrical signal that carried Blood Demon's explanation was transformed into sound waves that entered Luo Nan's ears. It stirred, causing him to let out an extremely faint sigh. The superconducting revolution. Another pillar of the modern metropolis, the transportation and energy supply network that was like the blood vessels of the human body, as well as the countless basic materials and technical fields, were actually engraved with Li Wei's imprint from the very roots. Li Wei was truly a boss-type fellow. And this was just the part that he had shown to the people. Many people, including Blood Demon, should be able to guess that the core that supported this powerful power far surpassed the level that Earth's current civilization should be able to display. But so far Luo Nan had not seen any particularly obvious or decisive evidence, be it from the mouth of the Blood Demon or from the information he had obtained from his own understanding. If given the chance, there would probably be quite a few people in the world who would grab Luo Nan by the collar and interrogate him. "Where in the world did you copy that configuration and superconfiguration theory from?" But Li Wei didn't seem to know where to start even if they were to interrogate him. In this regard he seemed to be a bit more low-key than Luo Nan. Frankly speaking, this was because of Li Wei's deep foundation on Earth. It was incomparable. This demon from beyond could not be viewed as a simple isolated individual. It was just like in an RPG game. Before seeing the final boss, one would have to struggle through endless levels for a while. Luo Nan thought for a few seconds. Then he thought about it and finally chuckled. "Okay, I get it. Thanks for telling me. Let's talk in detail when we meet later." After thinking about it for a while he finally chuckled and said, "All right, I understand. Thank you for telling me. Let's talk in detail when we meet again." Blood Demon replied, "Sure. We'll talk in detail when we meet." The call ended and Luo Nan could not help but think a few more things. Li Wei had such a common and close relationship with the extraordinaries of the world. What about the Blood Demon? Blood Demon Demon Luo Demon Demon Blood Demon. Luo Nan actually didn't feel anything strange at all. He shook his head slightly and strolled through the underground laboratory. This position was merely a few walls away from the independent power station that supplied energy to the entire North Bank gear. With Luo Nan's perceptual acuity, he was even able to clearly hear the humming roar of the operation of the energy furnace. Luo Nan's thoughts drifted a bit when he heard this voice. He still remembered that he had borrowed the power station's reserve energy to discover some of the secrets of the external neuron. Now that he thought about it, there were many details that could be explored. In today's world, all technological devices, at least intelligent electrical devices, had no resistance against the external neuron. Well, it should be said that the Dynamo Core products that Luo Nan had seen were in a nearly defenseless state. At first, Luo Nan treated it as an extraterrestrial higher-level civilization crushing a lower-level civilization. But as he continued to study and research, especially after the experience at the relay station, he gained a deeper understanding of Dynamo Core technology. All sorts of functions that came from the unknown returned to the plane of reality. Some functional domains of Dynamo Core technology were more mystical than what Luo Nan imagined. But some of them still had inherent limitations. They had to conform to basic laws no matter what. For example, the control of electrical devices. If the two structures were completely different, even the lowest level of information coding was different, what control was there to talk about? The reason why Dynamo Core products were able to do this was because there was no difference in the lowest level. Instead, there was a high degree of convergence. The Dynamo Core technology that came from the depths of the distant starry sky was completely compatible with the information technology of Earth. Weren't there too many coincidences in the universe? Luo Nan was more convinced that there was a long and deep fusion going on inside than this kind of imagination. Moreover, the weak side was leaning towards the strong side. It was truly meticulous. Luo Nan had already walked out of the North Shore jungle while his thoughts were floating. He arrived at the empty campus. Since it was class time, there were very few people on the large campus of Acumen College. The few people he saw were all in a hurry. Most of the students and teachers were arranged according to their classes. They were arranged into classrooms of various sizes. The school had its own rules and regulations to restrict them. Luo Nan, who had already entered a state of suspension, was a complete anomaly at this time. Of course, there were tens of thousands of students and even teachers in the school. There were many who were impatient with the restrictions of the past. They skipped classes, asked for leave, and were absent from work. Even though some people were in the classroom, their minds were wandering. Some people could even see Luo Nan strolling leisurely on the campus through the windows. It was unknown how envious they were in their hearts. Of course, they were merely envious of Luo Nan's freedom. If these people were to know what sort of price they would have to pay in order to have Luo Nan's current treatment, what sort of pressure they would have to endure, or perhaps they would be restricted by a completely new and unknown set of rules, the vast majority of them would immediately extinguish the thoughts in their hearts. After all, if you had to completely change your current lifestyle habits, even if you had to bet your future as the price, most people would feel that there was nothing wrong with the present. This was habit and order. Luo Nan absolutely did not dislike order. He even had a relatively strong inclination towards order. But once he clearly identified the layer of darkness that covered the skeleton that supported this layer of order on the surface, the inner marrow that quietly grew within it, and the genes and cells that were rooted upon it, a heavy pressure spontaneously arose from the bottom of his heart. Vaguely, this pressure seemed to transform into a dense demonic shadow that silently pressed against the back of his head. It could break his flesh and scrape his bones at any time to deal a fatal blow. At this time, the so-called order was quite hateful. Luo Nan rubbed the back of his head and muttered to himself, "In order to maintain the entropy decrease within a system, there must be a channel to handle the entropy increase. That channel. Where is the sewage pipe that conforms to the relevant magnitude? If he wanted to subvert this order, where should he start?" June 16, 2097. The third Sunday of June. Influenced by a certain powerful civilization before the Third World War, it was also known as Father's Day. It was basically one of the world's commemorative days of consumerism. This morning, Luo Nan's family finally broke free from the demonic claws woven by Mrs. Luo Shuqing and the home AI Old Mo. After working overtime for many days, Uncle Mo Haiheng finally had the time to rest. He personally cooked a sumptuous and delicious breakfast for everyone. And today the entire family was gathered together. Even that idiot Mo Ping actually crawled out of bed before lunch on the weekend. The 6 of them surrounded the table. They weren't pressed by the time of work or school. They spoke one after another, chatting as they ate. They were quite amused. Right now the main topic at the dining table was Rui Wen. Mo Ping gulped down his breakfast in a few gulps and concentrated on gossiping, Last night someone posted a practice video. Rui Wen didn't participate in the video, but what's the meaning of her repeatedly appearing in the camera? Rui Wen was talking about Rui Wen, but Mo Peng's eyes shot a glance at Mo Ya. Mingtang culture is simply leaking air from all sides. Even I wouldn't go to this extent. Is there an end to this hype? Rui Wen didn't respond at all. She just ate in small bites. She looked quiet and delicate, but it also seemed like she was tasting the fresh fragrance of each mouthful of porridge soup. It was unknown what these ordinary foods looked like in the end from the level of her perception. Luonan looked at Rui Wen for a long time. He subconsciously wanted to reach out and rub her head. At this time Mo Ya leisurely picked up a sesame pancake and tore it open. Since you know it's hype, why are you still wasting time? Can't I pay attention to a beauty? Mo Peng spoke boldly and confidently, but as a result he was met with a cold glare from Mrs. Luo Shuqing. His momentum immediately fell to the ground and he laughed. I just think you guys are going too far. There are already people in our class who are betting on whether or not Rui Wen will make her debut. I heard that there are people on the internet who are starting a fan club. If this goes on, it won't be easy to clean up the mess. Emoya was like Rui Wen. She ate the pancake in small bites. It was just that she was the one who made it. She ate the staple food like it was a snack. It won't be easy to clean up the mess. It's convenient for you to earn money. You can have Rui Wen sign it and sell it outside. No. Absolutely not. Mo Peng received the unfathomable gazes of his parents at the same time. He nearly peed his pants in fright. He immediately raised his hand and cried out in injustice. I used it myself. I just wanted to ride on the popularity and draw some attention online. I wanted to gain a few more fans. Really? Mrs. Luo Shuqing's expression remained unfriendly. Mo Haiheng dismissed it with a laugh. His gaze turned to Mo Ya. Your company has gone a bit overboard these past 2 days. At first it could be said that they were protecting him, but now that we've seen the results, they're still unwilling to stop. Who knows what kind of trouble they'll cause in the future. If it's not convenient for you to tell me, I'll talk to them. Emoya shrugged. What's so inconvenient about it? They've obviously been blinded by the heat these past 2 days. Speaking up to this point, Emoya asked. The demonstration hasn't stopped until now. Does the government have any sincerity? Don't let those old matters cause problems in the end before the mutation infection is messed up. Mo Haiheng shook his head. It's not easy to go through the files. He played the same old trick, casually changing the topic. He looked at Luonan. You're going out today? Luonan grinned. Yeah, I came back before dinner. Chapter 11:20. Not long after Luonan vaguely reported his itinerary, an overseas call came in. It was his former secretary Yin Lu. She was currently the vice chairman of the Luonan and His Friends Foundation. She was in charge of the foundation's daily work. Luonan took advantage of this opportunity to leave. Mister, your itinerary remains the same today? Yes, I'll be leaving right away. Luonan turned around and waved to his family. He went upstairs to change his clothes. Mrs. Luo Shuqing confirmed from behind. Are you eating at home tonight? Yes. Luonan responded casually. Yin Lu spoke at this time. Mister, are you going by yourself? Luonan returned to his room. He adjusted his clothes as he spoke. Of course I'm going by myself. It's the most convenient. Yin Lu had already called him last night. The reason why she was so concerned was because she was the one who provided the coordinates for Luonan's destination today. It was an abandoned laboratory located northwest of Spring City at the southern end of the Hengduan Mountains. It was also the place where Luonan's mother, Mrs. Bo Qingwen, had died. Luonan wished to go there to offer his sacrifice. This was something he had desired ever since he could remember, but he was unable to do so. Today was Luonan's birthday, and it was also the anniversary of Bo Qingwen's death. He wouldn't delay any longer no matter what. It's like this, mister. Yin Lu did her best to sense Luonan's emotions. She spoke carefully. I reported to you that I found an informant when I confirmed the coordinates. He worked in the laboratory back then. Today he found me and said that someone hired him to lead the way to the laboratory ruins. It seemed to be for the sake of offering his sacrifice. He asked me if I was one of them. Luonan furrowed his brows. Who's the employer? He's not too sure. He said it was arranged by the boss. Yin Lu paused for a moment. Seeing that Luo Nan didn't immediately ask for details, she explained softly, "It's been half a year since the end of last year until now. Several groups of people have confirmed the location of the laboratory ruins through him. Right now the pattern has already been set." "I know. It's my problem." Luo Nan had long understood this point. It was nothing more than his radiance during this period of time. People coveted him, wanting to trace back to the source and obtain some benefits. After the series of events with Snake Tongue and Jin Tong, these people didn't dare to come to Xia City. Otherwise, places like the North Bank Gear and the Tree Hole Space would have been sieved several times. They couldn't come to Xia City, so some of them went to the wilderness to search for traces of the Luo family's laboratory. The exposure of the Luo cult and the 70-format laboratory back then might have had a lot to do with Luo Nan. Right now, both sides had Luo Nan's telepathic lock onto them, and there were people searching elsewhere. They searched and they found this place. Luo Nan laughed and didn't mention it again. He looked at himself in the mirror and went downstairs. He asked Lu, "Is there anything else?" Indeed there were. Lu became more careful with her words. "The Foundation will send employees to various places and establish offices. Some cities need to submit information, especially the census plan. They can only proceed to the next step after the review." Luo Nan laughed. "Ha City and Shi City are in such a mess. Do you want them?" It just so happened that he was walking to the staircase on the first floor. When he heard the keywords Ha City and Shi City, everyone in the family, including Madame Luo Shuqing, looked over. They looked at Luo Nan's side, white on the inside and black on the outside. His clothes were concise and solemn. They were a bit stunned. Luo Nan waved his hand at them and quickly left through the living room. "Their attitude is very firm." Lu replied in a low voice. "The voices of support are very loud." This matter involved the operation of the Luo Nan and his friends Foundation, as well as the direction of the future global census. Luo Nan had already set the tone on this point. If they wanted to do a census, they would start with Ha City and Shi City, where the contradictions were the sharpest and the most chaotic. It seemed like the contradictions were sharp, but it was actually easier to fish in troubled waters. They could even blur the focus when necessary. But to do all this, they needed the full support of the city administrators. Of course, the most important ones were Apollon and Bat Guru. Putting the latter aside, no matter how difficult it was to deal with Apollon, he had the eye of the secret contract to mediate in the middle. There shouldn't be any major problems. But Luo Nan had communicated with Blood Demon last time. He had to pay attention to the subtle relationship between Apollon, the Apocalypse Laboratory, and Li Wei. But before Luo Nan could pay attention, a demonic moth appeared on the other side. The census plan and a series of information could be coarse or fine. The audit could be lenient or strict. This was a common method used by the administration to control people. They didn't need to control people. They could grasp the progress through the plan and understand the substantial progress of the global census. The Ha City and Shi City were like this, then the 86 cities would follow suit. The Foundation wouldn't need to do any work in the future. Luo Nan wasn't angry when he encountered this matter. From his perspective, it was much better for Ha City to send a demonic moth this early than for the Foundation to toss and turn after it had fully started its work. On the contrary, it had the effect of a warning. Besides, who would really count on the Foundation to do a census? If the spearhead were to be pointed over there, it could be considered as helping to cover up. Thinking about it this way, Luo Nan felt that there was a tacit understanding between him and Apollon. Do as they ask. There's no need to be anxious. Yes. Also, there's something else. It's about Miss Ruiwen. Luo Nan was already strolling along the community road. He subconsciously turned his head when he heard Ruiwen. He felt that Ruiwen could hear the sound coming from across the ocean. Inla didn't know Luo Nan's reaction. She just said, Mingtang culture's face was vague in this matter. They did a bunch of stupid things. It's because of my improper management. Mingtang Culture was indeed a company invested in by the Castle Financial Group. Inlu had taken the initiative to communicate and apologize. But Luo Nan didn't really care about this. In fact, with the current situation, the first one to be ambiguous was himself. This was because Luo Nan really didn't understand the abnormal attention and concern Ruiwen displayed in this public matter. It was hard to make a conclusion on what kind of problem it was. Perhaps this was an opportunity? It could enrich Ruiwen's overly monotonous life and help this little girl perfect her basic thinking circuits. It wasn't a bad thing. Of course, this couldn't be built on the foundation of psychological harm. The problem was, could this degree of disturbance really harm Ruiwen? Luo Nan didn't feel that this was a possibility for now. Aside from this, Luo Nan had an independent train of thought. It was just that it wasn't clear and mature enough. It was still faintly discernible. He needed to sort it out a bit more. Mingtang culture doesn't matter. Let's wait a bit more. Let's see what happens next. Yes. Yinlu was most likely more concerned about whether or not Luo Nan would get angry. She let out a sigh of relief when she saw him play it down. But there were some words that needed to be said. The upper echelons of Mingtang culture are mostly mediocre people. They aren't suited to have too much autonomy in this matter. If you don't mind, sir, you can use this opportunity to transfer a portion of the shares and the corresponding decision-making power. This will lower the risk to a minimum. Luo Nan slowly walked out of the community and arrived at the outer road. What do you mean? Yinlu spoke of the scheme in her mind. Miss Emoya is an insider and she's also your closest family member. She can hold at least a portion of the shares and have the right to speak on Mingtang culture's internal decisions. Emoya? I'm afraid she doesn't have the patience. Mr. Emo and Ms. Luo can do it as well. Okay. I'll go talk to them later. Yin Li's words made it seem like the Castle Financial Group was giving away shares to her. It involved a huge wealth of millions. But it really wasn't much compared to Luo Nan's close relationship with the Blood Flame Order. The two didn't take this matter too seriously. Yinlu only needed to know that Luo Nan wouldn't refuse. She didn't need to worry about the follow-up. But this didn't mean that Yin Li's matter was over. She used this opportunity to report to the Blood Flame Order. She followed Luo Nan's instructions to simulate the progress of the Hellfire Tyrant. Luo Nan actually had a deeper understanding of this than Yinlu. Yinlu just used this as a primer to lead to another matter. Recently, the madam has been studying the simulation while she's been in closed-door training. She has some insights and wants to share them with you. Huh? Luo Nan raised his eyebrows. Yinlu, who was tens of thousands of kilometers away, couldn't follow up with this one sound. This made Luo Nan understand that Yinlu knew that her words were taboo. Ultimately, the connection between Luo Nan and Madame Halder was deeper than Yin Li's. It was just like how Luo Nan's understanding of the structure of the Blood Soul Temple in the Abyss District was deeper than everyone in the Blood Flame Order put together. She didn't use the direct route but instead used Yinlu to deliver the message. She deliberately drifted around. What was she planning? Luo Nan didn't quite understand. He didn't understand and Yinlu didn't understand either. She only had some guesses. And the more she guessed, the more guilty she felt. So she became more and more cautious around Luo Nan. Most of the things she said before were probably because she sensed Luo Nan's mood. She was afraid that she would bump into the muzzle of a gun. Luo Nan really didn't care about these little thoughts. She was actually willing to speak up for her old master. This courage was quite commendable. But was there a difference between the old and the new? Luo Nan felt a bit amused by his own subtle thoughts. He was already walking on the street right now, far away from the residential community. It was a weekend morning and the flow of people was much less than usual. The streets were empty but he felt the sea breeze, slowly dispelling the dry air of early summer. Continue speaking. Yinli's voice grew weaker and weaker. Sir, the madam's meaning is that you just so happen to be going to Spring City. Yes, Spring City. Luo Nan turned his head and looked at the silhouette of the rising sun behind the scale-like clouds behind the tall buildings. He slightly narrowed his eyes and waited for the sun to shift in the clouds. The brightness and obscurity changed. Finally, rays of light filled the void and streaked through the gaps between the buildings. They shone on his body and his skeleton suddenly turned transparent. He disappeared without a trace in the blind spots of pedestrians and surveillance cameras. But in the next second, all the electrical equipment in the surrounding 100-meter diameter area suddenly short-circuited. The street soon turned into a chaotic mess. Luo Nan felt a bit of what he had created but he had no way to do it for the time being. He lifted his hand and moved his fleshly body. The distance was quite far and he didn't have the anchor point of the horned demon last time. It was hard to avoid a bit of power leaking out. The smoke and fire were a bit heavy, and it was hard to avoid President Ouyang's reprimand. Luo Nan just turned his head again. He used the position and height of the sun to confirm his current location in the cracked, deathly stillness of the wasteland. At the same time he spoke to Lu, who had just reconnected with the communication. It's a bit remote. I'll go look for her when I'm done.